Alright, guys, so I'm currently recording this on April the 20th. We don't have much more to do in this unit, so I'm going to do my best just to blaze through it. All we have left is Japan and Africa. And when I'm talking about the maps, imagine me looking at you angrily with my baseball bat, hitting my map with it and potentially not trying to have it fall on me. It's happened before. It's really heavy, and it kind of hurts. But talk about Japan. So, need to understand Japan's geography to help understand how their culture develops and why they are the way that they are. So, this map doesn't really give much credit to Japan, but Japan is a series of islands. There were four main islands, and it is an archipelago. My phone Siri activated for some reason. I wish it wouldn't do that because it never actually does anything when I ask it to. But Japan's an archipelago. It's a series of islands, but you have the four main islands. This one, this one, this one, and this one. I know this one's name is Hokkaido. I forget the names of the other ones. But Japan is separated from most other peoples because to the east of Japan you have the Pacific Ocean, and on the west side of Japan you have the Sea of Japan, sometimes known as the East Sea because it's the sea next to Japan to the east of Japan, and geographers don't really name things that fancy. But Japan is separated from other people based on the ocean. And because of that, it provides natural protection to them. And while Japan is heavily influenced by Korean and Chinese culture, they develop it on their own. So they get these things from China. And I mentioned Korea. Korea is mostly influenced by China as well. They all have very similar writing systems. Their religions are very similar. I can't think of the native Korean religion off the top of my head. Otherwise, I'd say it to show how smart I am, but I can't remember at this time. I haven't taken an East Asian class in like 4 years, so it is what it is. But it provides protection to Japan, and Japan's one of the very few countries to never really be invaded. Japan isn't successfully invaded until 1945, and even then it's just the island of Okinawa, which is way down south of Japan. So, Japan's heavily influenced by the Chinese. Their architecture, their writing systems, uh, to an extent, their government. And they also get Buddhism from China, and China gets Buddhism from the Indians. But yeah, what you need to realize for this class and just in the future is Japan is heavily influenced by China until the rise of the shogunates in the 11th and 12th century AD. And after a while, Japan kind of does their own thing. They become isolationist. We'll go over this more in World Two because it happens after the year 1500. But even with the advent of European exploration in the late 14 and into the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, Japan's never dealt with, and Japan, since they're isolated and they're so compact, they're actually able to fight back European aggression, and they don't actually open up until 1853 when the United States Navy asked them politely with a cannon to open your ports. And another thing you need to know about Japan is their ethnic religion. So, much like a lot of other Eastern religions, Shintoism, the ethnic religion of Japan, plays well with others. Shinto revolves around the veneration and the worship of nature spirits known as a kami. Um, there's a spirit of the water, a spirit of the trees, a spirit of the mountains, a spirit of the forest, spirit of the wind, etc., etc., etc. And you actually know the name of one of the kamis, but you just don't know it yet. The kami of the wind is known as the kazi. During World War II, the Japanese had suicide pilots that were known as kamikaze. Now you know. But this denotes like a spiritual place for the Shinto people. I used to know the name of the of the thing, but I don't at the moment. Sue me, I don't care. This is just a placeholder unit. This is like the one unit that like the SOL slips in to be like, look, guys, we cover more than just Europe. We only cover Europe and like Anatolia and like Mesopotamia, but this is just a placeholder unit to make the SOLs feel good about themselves. But with Shinto, it's just veneration of spirits. There's some ancestor worship. There's also worship of the emperor. In some incarnations, the emperor is actually like a spiritual advisor and even sometimes a god on earth. So this happens until the 1940s, after we accidentally nuke Japan twice and overthrow the monarchy, put the monarchy back into place, and write their constitution as the emperor is literally a god. But it coexists with Buddhism because there's no hardline stance on the gods you can or cannot worship. It's not like Christianity or Islam or Judaism, where there's pretty much the covenant with the Abrahamic God saying that I'm the only G, you can't have any other gods, I'll send some locusts your way or something. Shinto and Buddhism, they fit hand in hand together. You can do a little bit of both. So let's talk about their government. So, Japan is set up as a monarchy. Japan actually has the longest continuous dynasty to ever really rule a nation. The emperor's family can trace their heritage back to, I think it's about the 600 AD, maybe the 700s. But that doesn't matter. But the emperor is in control of the majority of the island, but Japan split up into feudal kingdoms. Later on, what happens is one of these feudal warlords, oh, what are the feudal warlords called? Not Shogun, not Ronin. It's slipping my mind. I should really look over my notes before this. But eventually, one of the feudal warlords raises enough men to march on the emperor's capital and overthrow him, and he establishes the shogunate. The shogun is the military ruler of Japan. And Japan sets up a de facto feudal kingdom where you have the emperor at the top, then you have the shogun below him. Below that, you have the feudal warlords. Below that, you have the samurai. The samurai are the entrenched warrior class. You're born into it. And the samurai later on have rights that commoners don't, such as the ability to actually carry a weapon and the ability to kill somebody if they make them angry. Literally, if you pretty much do anything to upset a samurai, they can literally just stab you in the street and nothing can happen. But imagine medieval Japan is just like a European kingdom, but in Japan because of the way the government's set up. So the emperor's still there, but the emperor's there just as like a figurehead. Since the emperor's viewed as a divine god, you can't just kill like the main god of your religion, so they keep him there, and he's kind of like the Queen of England now, to where he had no real power. And even till this day, there's no female primogeniture within Japan. The current emperor, it's not Akihito. Akihito stepped down. The emperor Naruhito, it's not Naruto. Naruhito, his eldest child is a daughter, and she's not in line for the throne. And there's been some discussions about changing that law. And Japan's just doing their own thing for the most part until the 1200s, when a group of the Mongols, led by a fellow named Kublai Khan, invades China. So China is ruled by the Song dynasty. The Song dynasty, they're not very powerful militarily, but they have a lot of money. They pay off the Mongols to be like, look, we're going to give you some money. Don't attack us. And Kublai's just like, yeah, sure, why not? And eventually he has the idea of, wait, if they keep paying us money every year, what if we just invade them and then take all their money? So he does, and he sets up the Yuan dynasty. And the Yuan dynasty, he gobbles up most of China. The Mongols, now the Chinese dynasty, conquers Korea. From there, he wants to conquer Japan. The Japanese go, we're just going to fight you. And the Mongols try twice to invade Japan, And each time that the Mongols come in, they get attacked by a hurricane, and they all die. And Japan never gets invaded. And it's called the Kamikaze. Let me see how I'm doing on time. I still got about 5 minutes, so I can probably get through Africa in that time. Yeah, accent. So, going over now to Africa. For Africa, the SOL wanted to know about 3 geographic regions and their kingdoms: Ethiopia, West Africa, and they want to make you know about Great Zimbabwe for some reason, even though Great Zimbabwe was just an isolated kingdom in a country of Zimbabwe that never really interacted with anybody and just mysteriously kind of just died. But let's talk about Axum. Axum is in the country now known as Ethiopia. Ethiopia is like 2 countries down from Egypt, bordering the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. Historically, they bordered the Red Sea because Somalia was part of it. I can't remember like the political geography of Africa off the top of my head. But in Ethiopia, what you need to know is they were Christian. That's literally it. Um, Ethiopia is they become Christian, I believe, in the 3rd or 4th century AD. They form their own branch of the church. So the Western Europeans have the Catholic Church, the Byzantines and the Russians have the Eastern Orthodox Church. There was a branch of the Christian Church that originated in Mesopotamia and spread into India, China, until it eventually was eradicated, known as the Nestorians. The Ethiopians, and follow me now, it's the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Even to this day, it still exists. They have diplomatic relations with other Christian kingdoms. No one really ever bothers them. But because Ethiopia is consolidated under one religion, they're actually one of the last African nations to be colonized in the 1930s. So while Africa's getting gobbled up between 1500 and 1918, Ethiopia can stay independent until the Italians come in the 1930s with the Italian Abyssinian Wars. They also built obelisks. The English took a lot of these obelisks because the English like to steal archaeological things. Let's talk about Zimbabwe. So with Zimbabwe, it's located in like imagine southern Africa, then go up a little in the rainforest. That's where it's located. Zimbabwean, the culture of the Zimbabwe people is located between the Zambezi and the Limpopo River. It forms a nice little river valley right in the middle. That's where Zimbabwe is. And with Africa, Africa is a gargantuanly huge continent, and it's kind of hard for people to get there. So you have all of these people kind of just doing their own thing, and they don't really interact with each other. So the people of Ethiopia didn't interact with the people of Zimbabwe. Same with West Africa, with Zimbabwe. The farther south in Africa you go, the more inhospitable and difficult it is to actually travel, which is the main reason why it's colonized rather late, is because white people aren't meant to be in the heart of Africa because of like mosquitoes and the heat and crocodiles. Also hippos. Hippos are extremely dangerous. But there is this trading center in Zimbabwe known as Great Zimbabwe. It's like a walled city complex, and they deal with cattle. And fun fact, when I'm doing like the finger quotation marks because I'm that type of person. Germans discovered it in the 1800s. They thought that a bunch of white people got lost in Africa and built this like city because there's no way the Africans could have built it. But yeah, Zimbabwe. And West Africa, think back to the 3rd grade with like Mali. It's those people. You have Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. They're just a succession of dynasties that form along the Niger River Valley. In West Africa, the area around here where my cursor is pointing is very fertile. It's easy to live there. Other than that, so like around here and over here, it's desert. and they specialize in gold and salt. I'm not going to explain why